Welcome to home video assignment number 2. You will be performing these 6 tasks: atraumatic square knot, atraumatic slip knot, tie at depth with gathering twice, tie at depth with gathering and a thumb maneuver, tie under tension, and then tie under tension where you purposely lock and then recover. The major learning objectives for this group of exercises are to develop smooth recovery between knots to avoid excessive lifting that can cause trauma when tying delicate tissue. Also, to develop good suture length control necessary to tie at depth, and finally to tie reliable, strong knots for tissue under significant tension. Atraumatic square knot, 45-second time limit. We start by placing a small rubber band on a needle driver, which should be readily available to every novice. We then use a 4/0 silk tie and start tying without any lifting. This is a square knot, therefore alternate knots should be crossed. A key point is to make sure that when you're cinching the knot down, that they are pulled evenly opposite of each other without any vector force pulling up. Atraumatic tie slip knot, time limit 45 seconds. You'll be throwing 6 throws, and what I want to emphasize on this video clip is how the recovery is done. As you can see on the right hand, once the knot is tied, the thread is very gently held in the 4th and 5th finger. It's just essentially cradled so that there is no unintentional tugging on the thread. Also note how the hand holding the post end of the suture does not move excessively. Sometimes you need to shorten the suture by gathering multiple times when you are tying at significant depth. This video clip will demonstrate this technique at the surface where it will be easy to see the actual mechanics. In this case, 2 gathering maneuvers are performed to move down this suture in order to securely cinch the knot with the forefinger just beyond the knot itself. In this video clip, we will demonstrate an alternate method of shortening up on the suture to be able to tie at depth. This is called using the thumb to extend the reach. Again, we will show this at the surface to better visualize the mechanics. We start with an initial gathering maneuver, followed by hooking of the thumb around the suture and then pushing the forefinger down as one extends the thumb. As you can see, the thumb is hooked and then the forefinger pushes the knot down while the thumb pulls back. Before proceeding on, we need to discuss one additional technical note. There is a critical error that is often made on the first knot during tying at depth or tying under tension. This video clip will demonstrate it. We call it shortening. Shortening occurs on the first knot as one is laying the knot down. It's more commonly seen for one-handed knots or two-handed slip knots. And what happens is, as one is laying the knot down, there's a tendency to pull up on the post end of the suture, which also facilitates laying down of the knot. If there's excessive pull on the post, what happens is the tail end of the suture becomes too short to be able to tie comfortably on subsequent knots. This is especially a problem when you are tying at depth. There are 2 ways to avoid shortening. First, either overcompensate by starting with a tail end of the suture that is very long, anticipating some degree of shortening, and then the other technique is to lay the first knot down, consciously avoiding moving the hand holding the post and using the forefinger to guide the knot down in almost a flat fashion where the tension is being pulled horizontally away from the knot. Tie at depth, gathering twice. 6 throws, 60-second time limit. When you are performing this task, make sure that you form the knots above the bucket. Also, avoid shortening the tail on the first knot. And then orient the bucket so that the screw is opposite from you. The first gather is usually easy to perform. The second one will be a little bit more difficult because of the limiting space in the bucket itself. You may have to slide back a little bit in order to perform the second gather correctly. Also note that you are laying down the knot precisely by using your forefinger and applying appropriate pressure just beyond the knot. Tie at depth, gathering and using the thumb to extend one's reach. 6 throws, 60-second time limit. For this task, you want to focus on, again, not shortening the tail excessively on the first knot, and then using the thumb and the forefinger to extend your reach to be able to tie the knot down securely. Tie under tension. Time limit 45 seconds. For our apparatus, we use a knot tying board, and in this case we used rubber bands with rings on them, and we actually put an additional knot over them to make the tension a little bit greater, which increases the challenge of the task. We also use a book to hold down the knot board so that it does not lift during this exercise. Tying under tension will test your ability to control your suture. You will need to regather as necessary in order to maintain an optimal working distance and optimal relative suture length. Remember that the first knot will unravel at least partially, and you will require a second slip knot in order to secure the knot. The mechanics of this is to pull straight up on the post while maintaining counter tension with the forefinger just beyond the knot itself. Sometimes when there is too much tension, even a third slip knot is necessary before you obtain a stable situation. On top of this, you should place a square knot to lock it in place. This video clip will explain how air knots are created when tying under tension. When tying slip knots, it's important to understand the concept of the post. Post is the strand of suture down which the loops of the knots, in this case the half hitch, are slid down. The left hand is holding the post in this video clip, and as the loops of each half hitch knot is formed, it is being slid down along the post. Now, depending on how the post is held, the slipping of the knot down the post can be made easier or more difficult. In extreme cases, if the post is kinked to such a degree that the knot becomes laid in a flat fashion, then the knot may lock in mid-air before it is able to completely cinch down securely on the tissue. And in these cases, further tension applied to the suture will only result in their breakage. Final task: tie under tension, locking, and then recovering. 60-second time limit. The exercise that you will be performing will require you to hold the post in a kinked fashion to lock the knot in midair on purpose, and then recover by straightening out the post to slide the knot down before it completely locks in midair and becomes unrecoverable. Please be sure that you can recognize that the post is being held in the left hand and that it is being kinked or locked when it's pulled to the left, and that it is being straightened when it's pulled diagonally to the right. And by holding it to the right, one is able to slide the knots down even if they have been partially locked in midair.